As you are able, I would invite you to please stand. You may be seated. You lost an hour's sleep. You got to get moving here, folks, right? Get the blood going. This is an exciting time. First Sunday of Lent, and we are beginning something that is new. We are going to begin a five-part worship theme, if you will, sermon themes, on building a life. And what we're doing is taking a verse that Jesus, or a parable that Jesus gave, sort of our common thread, where he said, which of you, in deciding to build a tower, does not first stop and decide how much it will cost? We're talking about costly discipleship, to sort of change images Bonhoeffer used. And we're going to talk about 5 things that we need to invest in our spiritual lives in these next 5 weeks that will enable us to build a foundation not just of faith, but of life. Life that will be joy-filled as well as fulfilled. And the first building block that we will focus on today, good thing I work out. Building block of commitment. Let us pray. Lord our God, as you moved in wonderful ways in the service, please move into the words about to be spoken, into that which will be thought, felt, so that in all ways we honor the living Christ who invites us to build with him. Amen. It is the worst feeling for a golfer. You're about 145 yards to the middle of the green, and you can hit a 7-iron about 135, 140. You can hit a 6-iron about 150, 155. But you don't have a 145-yard club. What do? If you're a good golfer, you hit a soft 7 or a hard 6. No, hard, well, you adjust your swing. But we're not talking about a good golfer, we're talking about me. And I would take my 6-iron and get up to the ball and say, I don't think, I'd go and take my 7-iron, and I can guarantee you, since I'm in between clubs, I will hit a lousier shot than normal because I cannot commit. There's that uncertainty that I will be feeling. And that is one of the worst feelings ever, isn't it? To be in between, where you're not sure, where you'll grab one club, yeah, okay, I'll commit, this is what I'll go for. And no, well, wait a second, though. And then you vacillate back and forth. And whatever shot you end up shooting, well, it's not your best effort because you cannot go all in. You cannot give yourself over to what you tried to commit yourself to. Awful feeling. And we know especially how awful that is when you're in between a decision about a job, about a relationship, about a health situation, about school, about Christ even. On the other hand, one of the best feelings in the world is when you're able to commit, regardless of the cost or the consequences. Mildred Parsons was 86 years old when she retired in 2002 from the FBI. She was a secretary in the FBI headquarters in Washington, D.C. She retired after 62 years, 9 months, and 2 days of service. In the course of that time, she had lived through 6 directors for the FBI and 30 field office bosses. And she did all of that time with the FBI. She worked all that time without ever taking a sick day. Can you imagine how many coworkers she made sick when she was sick and she went? I thought about that with the flu season, but no, she was there, That was her commitment. That was her duty. That's what called her to action. That was her reason to be. She was able to commit, and she was happy. You'd talk to Mildred, I bet she was just one of the happiest persons ever. And I thought of the Apostle Paul when I read Mildred Parsons' story. You could not help but to think of Paul when you heard the words that Stephanie read to you, especially these words. I don't consider I've made it my own. I haven't retired yet. I haven't made it to the golden parachute or whatever. No, one thing I do, forgetting what lies behind and straining forward to what lies ahead, I press on toward the goal for the prize of the heavenly call of God in Jesus Christ. Did you catch that? No. I have committed. I have committed my life to Christ, and that's what gives me zeal, passion. That's what gets me up in the morning. That's what puts me to bed with anticipation at night. That was his cause. Paul is a passionate man. When you think about it, you really cannot commit yourself totally to something, can you, unless you feel passionate about it. And Paul felt passionate about Christ. To commit totally to Him, you have to pick up the club and go for it. You have to push all your chips into the table, middle of the table, saying, I'm all in. You know, when you read Paul, you read about him saying, I count everything I've ever gained as rubbish, ready for allied waste to take away, or waste management take away, ready for the insurpassable opportunity of knowing Christ and serving Him and loving Him. Paul is a passionate man about Jesus Christ. And when I read about him, all his feelings, his devotion, I can't help but to wonder, well, how do I stack up, you know? If Paul is so passionate about Christ, where on that meter from 1 to 10, the passion meter about Jesus, where does Greg Weeks fall? What number does he have? What number do you have? Comparing Paul, who was a 10 plus. You know, the only way we can fully commit to Christ is to be totally honest with ourselves about what number we have and strive to take that number up a notch or two. And what I'd like to do for the rest of this sermon is to ask 3 very pointed questions of you. And in hearing those questions and struggling with an answer, maybe by the end of these next few minutes, we will find that whatever number you might have come up with, and I hope you've come up with a number where you are 1 to 10 on the passion meter, that by the end, maybe that number will have risen 1 or even 2. Because it takes us this effort to be honest with ourselves and our relationship with Christ. And it begins with this question. What have I let the world do to me? Note that does not say, what has the world done to me? No, what have I allowed the world to do to us? Because friends, if you base your happiness upon the world standards, then you are building on very shifting sand, are you not? Reverend Rob Weber, pastor at Grace Community Church in Shreveport, Louisiana, told of a time when, I guess it was a parishioner of his, said, Rob, I have spent all my life climbing the corporate ladder, and I got to the top only to discover that I put that ladder against the wrong building. There are a lot of wrong buildings out there, and they look really nice from the outside. And they usually start with the letter P, the building of pride, or of popularity, or of pleasure, or of possessions. And we just unconsciously put our ladders against such buildings. That's what everyone else is doing. That's what the world calls us to do. And we get to the top, and the goal we have attained grows dull, and the victory we won gathers dust. And we look and we ask, what have we done? And you know what? The church is guilty of that. Church is losing members. United Methodist Church and all mainline denominations for a number of years have hemorrhaged members at an alarming rate. And I have to think that one of the reasons we have done that is that unintentionally we have dummied down the gospel. We have played into, in trying to achieve members and trying to keep the doors open and the wheels of the church going, we have tried to say, come on in. You don't have to make any decision. You don't have to do without, from what the society and the culture says. No, you can live like however you choose to have a fulfilled life out there, and you can have a fulfilled life in here. And hence, because we're not offering that which is distinct from the shifting sands of the world out there, people come in and say, well, what are we getting? What to use? The church has to stand for a lifestyle that is over and against the shallowness of what we find on MTV, QVC, and what other initials of stations we see on cable. We have to stand against it and apart from it, offering something much more. You cannot be passionate about Christ and at the same time be passionate about being popular or passionate about your possessions or any of those other buildings. You cannot. You make that decision. And it starts with understanding what you've let the world do to you. And when you answer that question very clearly and honestly, then you can move on to the second one. What difference has Christ made in my life? If the world has done that or I've allowed the world to do that to me, what difference has Jesus made? And I think that's the good thing of those old revivals that churches used to have. Well, the reason is we forget. We forget the treasure that is before us every Sunday, actually every day. It's just on Sundays we need to recall that. Do you know how very important you are? That's the cornerstone of the gospel Jesus proclaimed. You are important. You are of ultimate importance. God's not just out there creating the Crab Nebula somewhere. God is in here knowing exactly what you're going through, knowing the number of hairs on your head, remember? You have a purpose in life. You're not just a chance of creation, but you have a purpose in life to make a difference, to make this world more beautiful with the talents and the interests God's given you to use for God's glory, for God's kingdom. And when you mess up, you're given forgiveness, a chance to start over, and a chance to know what this thing called grace and being a new creation is all about. This is what Christ has enabled you to experience, a life that is solid, to celebrate it. Russ Blowers is a pastor in Indianapolis, and during a meeting of one of his civic groups, the theme was, tell us about your job, tell us about your corporation, your company. And here's what Reverend Blowers wrote. I'm with a global enterprise. We have branches in every country in the world. We have our representatives in nearly every parliament and boardroom on earth. We're into motivation and behavior alteration. We run hospitals, feeding stations, crisis pregnancy centers, universities, publishing houses, nursing homes. We care for our clients from birth to death. We're also in life insurance and fire insurance. Well, I thought it was cute, fire insurance. Our product is free for the asking. Our CEO was born in a small town, worked as a carpenter, didn't own a home, was misunderstood by his family, and hated by enemies. But as far as we're concerned, he walks on water. And so what if he was totally crucified by his enemies? The good news is that he's back, and I love my meetings with him every day. That's a man who knows the difference Christ has made in his life. That's a man who is passionate, and so may we. Third thing, who inspires me? Paul said, be imitators of me and observe those who are following our example. See, Paul knew that we have to keep the fires, the passion going, so the best way to do it is to surround yourself with passionate people. And I have to tell you right now, one of the perks of my job is to see the number of people around me in this church who continue to inspire. A few weeks ago during the youth group, during their youth supper, there were some skateboarders who were not part of the youth group, but they were invited in and they ate dinner with the youth in our group. They sat at a table by themselves, and I love seeing adult leader after adult leader stop by, warmly greet the young people, get acquainted with them, making them feel right at home. I love seeing that. Those adult leaders inspire me. Imitate them, as Paul would say. Stewardship campaign last fall. So many of you increased your giving to this church even as sacrifice. And then when there was a gap between what we wanted to raise and what was needed for our ministry, 117 families gave a second mile giving, totaling about $60,000. They inspire me. Imitate them. Every week, there's a group of people in this church that meets in a room and goes over all the prayer cards, all the prayer concerns, and they pray in vivid detail and passionately for those prayer concerns that are listed. They inspire me. Go and imitate them. A few weeks ago in this very sanctuary, we kicked off our Ferguson initiative, covenanting with Reverend Willis Johnson as he starts the Wellspring United Methodist in Ferguson. And after each service, I was amazed and appreciative of the number of you who just surrounded Reverend Johnson, greeting him, passing out business cards, saying, "We'll help however we can." You're inspiring to me. Imitate the people who surrounded Reverend Johnson. You understand? It's just not a perk of my job to be inspired. Just be around each other here and you'll catch the fire. And it is burning brightly and it is burning warmly at Manchester United Methodist. And I know some of you are listening to this sermon in an in-between time in your life. Not too sure about what to do. What I would invite you to do is to remember what we talked about, because the key to helping you make a decision that's of ultimate importance to you in a certain sphere of your life is to remember who you are most passionate about. You're not most passionate about your boss. You're not most passionate about your teacher. You're not even most passionate about your closest friend or a spouse. You as a Christian are most passionate about Jesus Christ, who gave himself that you might have life abundantly. You remember that priority. You remember that passion, and whatever decision you're faced with, may your passion for Christ inform how you commit yourself to a course of action. Because your commitment to Christ will enable you to make a course of commitment that will reflect justice, compassion, courage, and integrity to your beliefs. And it all starts by ticking that passion meter up to the one you love so much. On 9/11, you might know that 343 firefighters died in the Twin Towers. One of those firefighters was the brother of the vice or deputy commissioner of the fire department for New York City. And afterwards, that commissioner, vice commissioner, said, "You do not go into a burning building unless you know that your essence is being a firefighter. Unless you know that you can make a real difference in someone's life." Well, friends, whatever situation you might be facing, commit yourself to a course of action that reflects that your essence is being a follower of Jesus Christ. Whatever course of action you take, make sure that it can reflect a real difference that you can make in His name in someone else's life. And in the process, you know what? You will discover once again the real difference that Jesus makes in your life. It starts with the building block of commitment.